I always knew that it was wrong, but after the first killing was not planned.
Jeffrey Dahmer admitted it himself. The first murder wasn't planned. But what happened after that terrible choice? Over the next 13 years, Dahmer killed 17 people, 17 lives stolen, and yet, somehow, he slipped through the cracks of justice for more than a decade. When he was finally caught, the world was shocked by the horror of his crimes. But prison was no escape. Behind those walls, Dahmer's life took a darker turn. Feared and hated by other inmates, his time behind bars ended violently, killed by fellow prisoners in a brutal attack. What happened in those final moments? How did a man so infamous meet his end? Today we explore Jeffrey Dahmer's last moments in prison, the final chapter of one of America's most notorious killers. Jeffrey Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From an early age, his life was marked by isolation and troubling behavior. Friends and family noticed his fascination with dead animals and an unsettling curiosity about death, signs that few understood at the time. As a teenager, Dahmer's behavior became more erratic. He struggled with alcoholism and deep loneliness. Despite his outward appearance as a quiet, unassuming young man, inside, a darker side was growing. By the time he was in high school, Jeffrey had started drinking, not just occasionally, but every day. He kept alcohol in his locker. He drank during class. Teachers noticed, but they didn't intervene. Inside, Jeffrey was falling apart, but on the outside, he looked like just another lost teenager. No one knew that the boy who once collected animal bones would one day become one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. It began in 1978. Jeffrey Dahmer was 18 and home alone. His parents had recently separated. His mother had taken his younger brother and left. His father had moved out, and Jeffrey was left in a quiet house, surrounded by woods. That's when he picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They drank together, talked. But when Stephen tried to leave, Jeffrey didn't want him to. So, he killed him. It was sudden, brutal, and unplanned. Dahmer later said he didn't even know why he did it. He buried Stephen's remains in the backyard. Then, life moved on. For over 9 years, he didn't kill again. But when he started, he couldn't stop. From 1987 to 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered 16 more men and boys. He lured them with promises of money or just a place to stay. Many were vulnerable, young, poor, or homeless. Some were barely adults. He drugged them, strangled them, and then did things almost too disturbing to describe. He kept their bodies, photographed them, dissected them. He stored parts of them in his apartment, bones, organs, even skulls. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Right. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
However, it didn't last long. Neighbors complained about the smell, about strange noises, but police dismissed their concerns. More than once, they had a chance to stop him and didn't. In one horrifying moment, they even returned a drugged, bleeding 14-year-old boy back to Dahmer, believing it was just a domestic dispute. That boy died hours later. Dahmer killed 17 people in total, and for 13 years, he got away with it. Until one night in July 1991, one man escaped. It was July 22nd, 1991, a day that would end Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror. That afternoon, a young man named Tracy Edwards escaped from Dahmer's apartment. He was battered, bruised, and desperate for help. Tracy flagged down 2 police officers and told them about the nightmare he had just fled. When officers followed him back to Dahmer's apartment, They were not prepared for what awaited inside. Behind the door was a scene straight out of a horror story, evidence so chilling it shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Remains in acid vats, human skulls in jars, Polaroid photos of dismembered bodies. 17 lives taken in his apartment over more than a decade. Neighbors, friends, and even the police were stunned. How had this man escaped suspicion for so long? How had he hidden such dark secrets in plain sight? Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested on the spot, and over the next few weeks he confessed to everything. He told investigators about each victim, where he met them, how he killed them, what he did afterward. There was no emotion, just detail. At his trial in Milwaukee, Dahmer pleaded guilty but insane. His defense claimed mental illness drove him to kill, but the jury disagreed. They found him legally sane. And on February 15, 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer was sentenced to 15 life sentences, over 900 years behind bars. The courtroom was silent. Families of the victims cried. Some said justice had been served, but others believed something darker was still waiting. After the trial, Jeffrey Dahmer was sent to the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. It was a maximum security prison, steel doors, razor wire, cold, colorless walls, a place built to contain the worst. At first, Dahmer was kept in isolation for his own safety. Other inmates knew who he was, and they hated him. But eventually, Jeffrey asked to be moved to the general population. He said he wanted to be around people. He wanted to serve his time like any other prisoner. And in a strange way, he did. He took on work duties, cleaned bathrooms, mopped floors, ate meals in the cafeteria. On the surface, he was quiet, polite, obedient, but inside, something had changed. He started reading the Bible, took religious courses, even got baptized in the prison whirlpool. Some believed it was sincere, others saw it as an act, a man trying to find peace or control the narrative. Still, he showed signs of remorse. In letters and interviews, he spoke openly about his guilt. He said that he should have been put to death years ago, but prison was never going to be his safe haven. Other inmates watched him closely. Many wanted revenge. Some were sickened by what he did. Others simply saw him as famous and vulnerable. And then came the moment when those quiet tensions finally exploded. November 27, 1994. It was just past 6 in the morning. Inside Columbia Correctional Institution, the prison lights flickered on. In cell block A, Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was already awake. He followed the same routine every morning, quiet, predictable, controlled. He made his bed, folded his blanket, brushed his teeth with short, mechanical strokes. There was no sense of fear on his face, no sign that he knew what was coming. Breakfast was served in the cafeteria around 6:30. Dahmer didn't talk much. He never did. He sat alone, eating quietly, eggs, toast, a carton of milk. Other inmates watched him. As the morning hours passed, Dahmer prepared himself for the day ahead. As the afternoon settled in, Jeffrey Dahmer continued his daily routine. After finishing his cleaning duties in the gym, he returned to his cell for a short break. He ate a simple meal quietly, mostly keeping to himself as he often did. Later, Dahmer spent time reading. Books had become one of his few escapes during his years in prison. He flipped through pages methodically, absorbed in stories far removed from his own grim reality. Around mid-afternoon, he participated in a therapy session with a prison counselor. The sessions were part of his attempt to understand and come to terms with his past actions. He answered questions calmly, reflecting on his behavior and expressing a mixture of regret and confusion about his life. Afterward, he resumed some light chores assigned by the prison staff. Throughout the afternoon, his movements were measured and deliberate, following the structure that prison life demanded. As daylight began to fade, Dahmer prepared for the evening lockdown, settling in for another night behind bars, unaware that the next morning would bring a sudden and violent end. As evening fell across Columbia Correctional Institution, the cell blocks dimmed to a low hum. Dinner was served around 5 o'clock, standard prison fare, eaten quickly and quietly. Jeffrey Dahmer sat alone at the edge of the table. He chewed slowly, mind somewhere far away. After the meal, he returned to his cell. The metal door clanged shut behind him. On most nights, he would spend the remaining hours reading his Bible, but on this night, he seemed especially quiet, reflective. 4 months earlier, on July 3rd, an inmate named Osvaldo Durruti had tried to kill Dahmer. It happened right after church, inside the prison chapel. Dahmer was sitting silently when Durruti came up behind him and attacked him in the throat. The wound was shallow. He survived. But it changed something in him. From that moment on, Dahmer knew death could come any day, and he didn't seem to care. When his mother, Joyce, called him after the attack, deeply shaken, he only replied that it doesn't matter. He hadn't seen her since Christmas of 1983. But over the years, their relationship slowly repaired, one phone call at a time. She called every week. His father, Lionel, and stepmother, Shari, also kept in close contact. But Jeffrey seemed resolved. There was no fear in him anymore. No hope, either. Only a steady rhythm of waiting. As the night went on, the prison fell silent. Doors locked, lights dimmed, and Jeffrey Dahmer lay awake in his bunk. One final night behind those concrete walls. November 28, 1994, Columbia Correctional Institution, Portage, Wisconsin. It started like any other morning. Shortly after sunrise, Jeffrey Dahmer left his prison cell to begin his assigned cleaning duty. With him were 2 other inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. The 3 men were sent to clean separate parts of the prison gym. Dahmer was assigned to the staff locker room. Anderson worked on the inmate locker area. Scarver had his own task. There were no guards watching them. For nearly 20 minutes, they were left completely alone. Around 8:10 in the morning, a prison staff member walked into the shower area and froze. Jeffrey Dahmer was lying motionless on the floor. His head and face had been smashed in. A 20-inch metal bar had been used to beat him. Blood was everywhere. It looked like his head had also been slammed against the wall several times. Next to him was Jesse Anderson. He was badly injured too, hit with the same weapon. Both men were still alive when help arrived. They were rushed to a nearby hospital, but the damage was already done. Jeffrey Dahmer died about an hour later at 9:11 in the morning. He was 34 years old when he died. Jesse Anderson died 2 days after the attack. Christopher Scarver, the 3rd inmate, quietly returned to his cell and told a guard what had happened. He said he had killed both men because he believed God had told him to do it. Later, Scarver explained to investigators what happened. He said he first attacked Dahmer while Dahmer was cleaning. Then he went after Anderson. He also revealed that neither of them screamed or tried to fight back. Dahmer had looked at him and said he didn't care whether he lived or died. Scarver insisted that he hadn't planned the murders in advance, but prison officials found out he had hidden the metal bar under his clothing just moments before the attack. Outside the prison, the news of Dahmer's death spread fast. Inside the homes of victims' families, the reactions were complex. Some felt relief. Others were angry, not because Dahmer had died, but because his death came swiftly, without the slow, painful reckoning they had hoped for. Catherine Lacey, the mother of Oliver Lacey, said the hurt now felt even worse. She believed Dahmer no longer had to suffer the way they did. Legal experts debated what it all meant. Some said justice had been served, not through the system, but through fate. Others warned that letting violence become justice was a dangerous path. The state launched a formal investigation into how 3 inmates had been left unsupervised, especially considering Dahmer's notoriety and the known threats against him. The Department of Corrections admitted the lapse, but by then the damage was irreversible. Christopher Scarver became a name people recognized overnight. Some tried to label him a vigilante. Others saw him as mentally ill. In interviews years later, Scarver claimed he believed Dahmer had mocked other inmates with food shaped like body parts. Whether true or not, that claim added another layer to the mystery of what really happened in those final minutes. On May 15, 1995, Scarver was sentenced to 2 more life terms, but the court made it clear this was not a righteous act. It was murder, plain and brutal. As for Dahmer's family, they withdrew from the public eye. His mother, Joyce, struggled with the weight of both grief and shame. His father, Lionel, continued to wrestle with guilt over what signs he might have missed, what chances he might have lost. Jeffrey Dahmer was cremated. There was no public funeral, no memorial. Though Jeffrey Dahmer's last words on the morning of November 28th were never made public, the last time the world truly heard from him was at his sentencing, over 2 years before his death. Standing before the court, he didn't ask for mercy. He said he took full responsibility, not just for the murders, but for the violence and the destruction he had caused. He acknowledged that no apology could undo what had been done, and he made it clear that he didn't expect forgiveness, not from society, not from the families, and not even from himself. He said he had strayed from God, and in his own words, he had created a Holocaust. He told the court that he wished he had stayed on a different path, one rooted in faith, not horror. And he admitted that whatever he had become, it was because he had chosen to reject that higher power. Whether people believed him or not, whether those words were too little, too late, that was the final glimpse of Jeffrey Dahmer the world would ever hear. In the years following his murder in prison, Dahmer became one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. His case has been the subject of numerous documentaries, films, and books, each trying to unravel the twisted mind behind the murders and the failures of the systems around him. Documentaries like The Jeffrey Dahmer Files and Dahmer on Dahmer, A Serial Killer Speaks, have offered chilling insights, using interviews with those who knew him, survivors, and law enforcement. These films explore not only the crimes, but the human stories entwined with them, the victims, the families, and the culture of fear Dahmer left behind. Hollywood also took interest. Films such as Dahmer, starring Jeremy Renner, and the more recent My Friend Dahmer, based on a graphic novel about his teenage years, have examined the complex nature of Dahmer's life and psyche. These portrayals sparked debates about how to balance telling his story without glorifying the horror. Jeffrey Dahmer is gone, but the questions he leaves behind still echo. How does someone become this broken? Was that justice, or just more violence? What do you think? Should Jeffrey Dahmer have lived out the rest of his sentence behind bars, or did his death bring a kind of closure the courts never could? Let us know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.